Today's learning goal will be I will be able to use proportions to convert units between different measurement systems. The math standard we will be covering today is MAFS 0.6, .RP, 0.1, 0.3. Today we're going to continue our discussion on measurement systems. As you recall, we have two primary measurement systems. We have the customary measurement system, which is where we use feet, inches, yards, miles, so on and so forth. And then we have the metric system, which uses meters, grams, liters. Now today we're going to talk about how to convert between those two systems. So if I want to find out how many miles are in a kilometer, things like that, that's what we're going to talk about today. On this page I have a conversion chart that you can use for your assignment. This will also appear in your notes. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at how many meters there are in 5 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the ratio of feet to meters because the problem is asking me how many feet there are, or how many meters there are in 5 feet. So if I go back to my chart, I'll see that the ratio of feet to meters is 1 to 0.305. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a proportion. 1 to 0.305 equals 5 to x. X is our unknown. So 1 foot equals 0.305 meters. So 5 feet must equal, let's cross multiply. When we do that, we find out that 1x equals 1.525. And if we round that to the nearest tenth, we can say 1.5. So in this problem, we found out that in 5 feet, there are 1.5 meters. Now let's talk about using conversion factors. A conversion factor is a multiplier used to convert between units. Now, in conversion factor, we see the word factor, and factor is a number that we multiply. Now, in the definition, you see the word multiplier. So again, we must be multiplying. So this conversion factor is going to be something we multiply to help us convert between two different units. Let's look at converting between a mile and a kilometer. Now, 1 mile equals 1.61 kilometers. As a ratio, I could write this one of two ways. I could say 1 to 1.61 if I'm going between miles and kilometers. Or I could say 1.61 to 1 if I'm going from kilometers to miles. So let's look at how many kilometers there are in 3 miles. Which ratio would I use to find out how many kilometers there are in 3 miles? I'm trying to find kilometers to miles. Well, I'm going to use the second one because that one is written kilometers to miles. And in my question, it says, how many kilometers in 3 miles? So we're going to start off with that ratio, 1.61 kilometers to 1 mile. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. I'm going to take that ratio and I'm going to multiply it by 3 miles because I'm trying to find out how many kilometers there are in 3 miles. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to cross out the miles. I'm going to keep the numbers, but I'm going to cross out the miles because they cancel each other out. So if I do that, I'm going to be left with a multiplication sentence of 1.61 times 3. So if I multiply 1.61 times 3, that's going to give me 4.83. So in 3 miles, there are 4.83 kilometers. So my conversion factor for this problem, going from kilometers to miles, is 1.61. So I will take the number of miles that I have, and I'll multiply it by 1.61, and that will tell me how many kilometers there are in that many miles. Let's look at another one. Okay, we're going to use the same 1 mile to 1.61 kilometers. There's my two ratios like we had on the previous slide. Except this time, I want to know how many miles there are in 3 kilometers. So I'm going to look at my two ratios and try to figure out which one I'm going to use for this. Okay, I'm trying to find miles to kilometers. So I'm looking for miles to kilometers. I want to find the ratio that is set up as miles to kilometers. Well, that's going to be the first one, 1 mile to 1.61 kilometers. So let me go ahead and take that ratio, and I'm going to multiply that by 3 kilometers. Next, what I have to do is I have to cross out or cancel out my kilometer labels. I'm going to keep the numbers. I'm just going to cross out kilometers on the top and the bottom. They cancel each other out. So if I do that, I'm left with, on the top, 1 mile times 3, and on the bottom, I'm left with 1.61. So 3 over 1.61 is the same thing as 3 divided by 1.61, which equals 1.86. So in 3 kilometers, there are 1.86 miles. So for this problem, our conversion factor is 1 over 1.61. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you how we're going to go ahead and convert between our customary measurement system and the metric system. So if you look at your notes, you have your conversion charts. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to look at inches to centimeters. So I know that the ratio of inches to centimeters, 1 inch to 2.54 centimeters. Okay, so that's my ratio of inches to centimeters. Now, let's say I want to find out how many centimeters there are in 5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll rewrite my initial ratio. Now, I want to know how many centimeters there are in 5 inches. So again, the bottom I have my centimeters, the top I have my inches. Now I can do this several ways. One way I can do cross multiplication. X equals 2.54 times 5, and that would be how many centimeters I have in 5 inches. Another way I can do it, how do I get from 1 to 5? I multiply by 5. So I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom. 2.54 times 5. Which is really the same thing we did here. So you can do it setting up the ratios, or you can set it up doing the cross multiplication. Both ways will work. You're going to get the same answer. Now another way we can do it, we talked about conversion factors. Now remember, a conversion factor is a multiplier we can use to help us convert between 2 units. So again, I know inches to centimeters. Okay? And I want to know how many centimeters there are in 5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my ratio again. I'm going from centimeters to inches. So I'm going to write this as 2.54 to 1. Now this is tricky, so make sure you pay attention. Centimeters to inches. What I want to do is I want to multiply this by 5 inches, because I'm trying to find out how many centimeters there are in 1 inch. This is how the conversion factor works. We can set that to 1 if we want, if it makes it easier to look at. I'm going to cross out my inches here and here. They cancel out. So now all I'm left with is 2.54 times 5. Now, my conversion factor to go from centimeters to inches is 2.54. So if I know that conversion factor, I can convert any number of inches into centimeters. Okay? I can find out how many centimeters there are in 5, 6, 7, 8, 1,000 inches. I can find out how many centimeters there are if I know this. So if I want to find out how many centimeters there are in any number of inches, I'm just going to multiply 2.54 times however many inches we're talking about. And that will tell me how many centimeters there are in that many inches. So there's 3 ways that we can solve this problem. The first, again, we can look at the conversion factor. Second, we can set it up as equivalent ratios. Whatever we do on the bottom, we do on the top. Or we can go ahead and set it up as a proportion, cross-multiply, and then solve for x. So those are 3 ways that we can convert units between measurement systems. You can also use these 3 same methods to convert between measurements within the same system as well. Pretty cool.